So what is this verse? 8.
It's 14.
Oh, that, okay, that's 11:14. Okay. I think you need new straps for your cartals. Now, okay, we know these are cartals, but the cartals are also, you just celebrated Balaram Jayanti, so these instruments, they're Balaram in the form of kartals to serve Krishna through kirtan. So these instruments need to be carefully taken care of. So when the straps need to be replaced, just like we dress the deities every day, we don't neglect them. We should also not neglect Krishna's paraphernalia, you know. Jaya Rama Radha Sundari Hari Jaya Rama Radha Sundari Hari Jaya Rama Radha Sundari Hari Gopi Janababa Girivardhari Gopi Janababa Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana 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 Yamunatiya Anachari Yamunatiya Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janababa Girivardhari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jayam Shri Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhajakacharya Astatara, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Iskambi Biti, Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. All glories, all glories, all glories to the assembled devotees And all glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So, Hare Krishna, good morning. So the Srimad Bhagavatam class today, continuation of the 8th canto, chapter 23, the demigods regain the heavenly planets, and today's verse is 14. And I haven't been following this particular chapter, so please forgive me. So, first word by word in the translation. Brahman, O Brahmana, Shantanu, please describe Shishyasya of your disciple, Karma Chidram, the discrepancies in the fruitive activities, Vitanvata, in the fruitive activities, Vaishamyam, discrepancy, Brahmadrishtam, when it is judged by the Brahmanas, Shamam, equipoised, Bhavet, it so becomes. Brahmam Shantanu Shishyasya, Brahmam Shantanu Shishyasya, Brahman Shantanu Shishyasya, Karma Chidram Vitan Swataha, Karma Chidram Vitan Vataha, Karma Chidram Vitan Vataha, Yatat Karmashu Vaishamyam, Yatat Karmashu Vaishamyam, Brahmadristam Shaman Bhavet, Brahmam Brahmadristam Shaman Bhavet, Brahmadristam Shaman Bhavet, Brahman Shantanu Shishyasya, Karma Shidram Vitan Vata, Yatat Kamashu Vaishamyam, Brahmadristam Samam Bhavet, Brahman Shantanu Shishyasya, Karma Chidram Visantata, Yatat Kamashu Vaishamyam, Brahmadristam Samam Bhavet. O best of the Brahmanas, Sukra Acharya, please describe the fault or discrepancy in your disciple Bali Maharaj, who engaged in performing sacrifices. This fault will be nullified when judged in the presence of qualified brahmanas. Purport by His Divine Grace. When Bali Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj had departed for the planet Sutala, Lord Vishnu asked Shukracharya what the fault was in Bali Maharaj for which Shukracharya had cursed him. It might be argued that since Bali Maharaj had now left the scene, how could his faults be judged? In reply to this, Lord Vishnu informed Shukracharya that there was no need for Bali Maharaj's presence, for his faults and discrepancies could be nullified if judged before the brahmanas. As will be seen in the next verse, Bali Maharaj had no faults. Shukracharya had unnecessarily cursed him. Nonetheless, this was better for Bali Maharaj. Being cursed by Shukracharya, Bali Maharaj was deprived of all his possessions, with the result that the Supreme Personality of God had favored him for his strong faith and devotional service. Of course, a devotee is not required to engage in fruitive activities, as stated in the Shastra, Sarvarhanam Achyutejya, Bhagvatam 4:31-14. By worshipping Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one satisfies everyone. Because Bali Maharaj has satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there was no discrepancies in his performance of sacrifice. So, can repeat this verse. O best of the Brahmanas, Shukracharya, please describe the fault or the discrepancy in your disciple Bali Maharaj, who engaged in performing sacrifices. This fault will be nullified when judged in the presence of qualified brahmanas. Om Agyantimirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakmu Sunitam Jana Tasmi Sri Rave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Narasati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskachari Satarne Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vansha kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaibhyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Thank you for allowing me to be a guest in your beautiful temple. I think for the last 40 years, they've been here about 40 years, right? The deities. So it was such an exciting adventure how they came to Australia. They were actually sent back to India and then again returned, Just, there's some unusual adventures associated with your country. Like actually, I don't know if anybody was there yesterday when we were speaking, and that was another interesting place. It was a former penitentiary for ladies, and they knocked out the floors and made it into a stage, a performance area. But they still had the windows with the bars on it. But I could tell the way it was situated, that it would be above the heads of the occupants of the cell. I mean, they couldn't look out. So maybe a little light could come in, but they would not, unless they were gigantic, tall, they wouldn't really be able to look out. Quite a depressing situation, all in all. But then by some inconceivable mercy of Srila Prabhupada, there we were chanting Hare Krishna. And I was thinking there's probably a few souls hanging around who are just caught, because that's really often the place in these old buildings, particularly buildings that are associated with a lot of grief and pain and suffering. Nobody goes to jail and prison happily. Nobody goes there to have a good time. So a prison is an epitome of suffering in this material world, which is also quite accurately compared to a prison. So just like when you're in the prison house, there's no chance of getting out unless perhaps you perform some particular activities, mostly staying in there for a particular number of years, right? Or perhaps by some inconceivable arrangement you might get your sentence commuted, means shortened. Or at least in America, the president has the right every year to excuse a certain amount of people. He has that right. So maybe you have that here, that the head of your country may give an excuse. Okay, you did a terrible thing, but you've paid some time and you show remorse, so we're going to let you out and you have another chance. But mostly it's just you're in there and you're suffering. And then your suffering, it can actually be, if you're in the right consciousness, a great benediction, if one is Krishna conscious. Srila Prabhupada said actually there is no suffering for a devotee, for one is Krishna conscious, so that suffering is actually his ecstasy. So maybe some of you are suffering sometimes or feel like you are. Please keep this in mind. I see some doubts. Because a devotional service, we read in the Bhagavad Gita, it's joyfully performed. So if one is not joyful, we're performing service, one is not joyful, Prabhupada used the word jolly, it's not jolly, then there's a problem. And Krishna can't be the problem. It means we have a problem. And what is the problem? How do we get into the prison house of material life? We come in contact with that person who's in charge of the prison house, Maya Devi, delusion. And we become bewildered. We get some enchantment. Oh, so nice. Let me enjoy it for a while. And then you think, I'll be careful. I won't get caught. But there's no way that you can't get caught once you start associating willfully with the material energy, with Maya Devi. Just like you can break the law, sometimes you get away with it. In my younger days, we didn't have a great deal of respect for what we called the establishment. So we didn't take very seriously the rules and regulations of the establishment, means the government, whether local, state, or federal. And we would do things that were contrary to the policies. and we just, laugh at it. But sooner or later, you get caught. And sometimes you get caught enough to like, oh, actually, this is a little serious. Okay, I won't do that anymore. Or sometimes you get caught and somehow or other you're excused. So then instead of thinking, wow, that was a close call, I better not do this anymore, you try again. So sometimes you really get caught. Means you have to go to jail, like these poor ladies who used to live in that horrible, really it was a narrow, tight confine, very little natural light available to come in, and probably very harsh conditions. So then your suffering is amplified. But the suffering, whether in the prison house that we had, like the prison house within the material world prison house, or the prison house of the material world, it's all the same. It's identification with the body as a self and in contact with the material energy, trying to be the controller. And it backfires, it doesn't work, But Prabhupada called that dog-like stubbornness. So like a stubborn dog, you think, okay, it didn't work, so there has to be another way at it. I'll try another way. Instead of understanding, this doesn't work, I have to try to free myself from this illusion and prepare myself for serving Krishna and going back to Godhead. So, in this verse, talking about fault of asking Sukracharya, who had cursed his disciples, so what was his fault? Now, devotees generally don't go around asking. We shouldn't go around asking, but sometimes we do it, What is the fault of this one? Or instead of asking, even better, we start pointing out, oh, this one, that, Instead of glorifying the person for being a devotee of Krishna, we start amplifying their fault. So, here Lord Vishnu is asking, what was the fault? So what kind of an example is this? Well, actually, it was a setting the stage type of question. Like if did any of you go to the opera house performance? So then, they were having these little dramas, and each time they would change the stage, the lights would go down, and then people with black clothes would scurry on and move everything out, and then the lights would go back, and there was a whole different scene. So when the lights were down, those guys in the black, they were setting the stage to make, to bring forth, evoke the next scene. So Lord Vishnu is setting the stage for an important lesson, which mentions in this purport that you're going to find out what that lesson, about it in the next verse. So I can't talk about it because it's in the next verse. But still, he's asking Sukracharya, what is the fault? Now he's the knower. Lord Vishnu knows everything, past, present, and future. So, why would he ask a question of anybody? He knows the answer. But he asks the question in order to set the stage for teaching a lesson. Just as he spoke to Arjuna, his dearmost friend. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita. Not that Arjuna actually needed that discussion, but for the generations and generations and millenniums into the future, we needed that discussion. And Lord Krishna kindly obliged, because he was there then and now, and he was not going to be coming back for a very long time. So there needed to be some tangible remnants, something that would remain of these powerful teachings to Arjuna. And those teachings were intended for mankind. But it's interesting, he's asked, Sukracharya, he's an interesting person because he is the demigod's guru. And It cursed his disciple. But actually, at one point, Sukracharya himself behaved in a very abominable manner. You might say in our language, he fell down. He engaged in illicit activities with the wife of his brother. Can't get much more nasty than that. But still, he was rectified and forgiven. It is something to bear in mind, that this process of Krishna consciousness is about rectification. If we nailed a person for every fault they had, none of us would be alive. We'd be full of nails. would be bleeding to death. Or if I use the word nail and then, like, here, that's it, pointing it out, so using it not as a nail where you bang it in, but more like pointing it out, we'd be so full of pain, just mental and emotional pain, that somebody's, this, that. It's, very depressing, especially if it's true. So there's got to be a way out of the predicament, and that's Krishna consciousness, the detachment from the material energy. That is the beginning of your spiritual life, is when you recognize the difference between material and spiritual energy, and then you begin that process of disentanglement. And this is the process of bhakti yoga. Actually, all yoga is intended to disengage you, or at least disengage your senses from false enjoyment. But nowadays the yoga has become another form of sense gratification. People twisting their bodies and breathing and holding their breath and trying to get greater enjoyment out of their body through the yoga practice. So that's really not yoga as is understood, or as delivered by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada delivered Bhakti Yoga, and he explained to us that actually all yoga is intended to help you control your senses so that you can actually elevate yourself spiritually. That's the intention, not to live longer, be more fit so you can engage in more sense gratification. That's not the goal. Even if you live longer, if you're not engaged in Krishna's service, then that long life will be rewarded with another long life at the end, at the end. So, one of the great attributes of Bali Maharaj was his fidelity to his word. Means he was true to his word. And he was very humble. He was the king, he was powerful. And of course, initially he was kind of laughing, laughing when that vomita came, and he was like, oh, you're so cute. How when you see a little kid, oh, you're so cute, you're so adorable. What do you want? And the kid will ask for something kind of stupid, So he asked, for the one step. And Bali Maharaj kind of, here I am, the great king, I own all that you, as far as you can see, I own it, and you're asking for one step, and you're just this little guy, That's so childish, Ask for something a little more, And Sukracharya was warning him, watch out, that's not an ordinary dwarf, watch out. But Bali Maharaj, he wasn't ignoring his spiritual master because he thought he was better than the spiritual master. He was ignoring his order, because he had given his word. I'll give you something, take whatever you want. He couldn't take it back. In America we have an expression, if you give something to somebody and take it back it's called Indian giving. I guess we used to have, like you have Aboriginal people, we had Native American Indians, and of course those people get overrun by the invading foreigners, but sometimes, because they were treated so badly, if they would take back, they would be given some kind of a treaty, but then the invading foreigners would, would take advantage of the Indians. So sometimes they would take back, here I'm giving it to you, and then they'd see how they were treated. No, I'm taking it back, So it's called Indian giving. It's not really giving, So he wasn't like that. Even when he saw that he was going to lose everything, up to the point he just put his head on the ground. Honest humility, not this like, oh yes Prabhu, but actually, oh yes, I'm so humble, He was actually humble. He was actually seeing himself as inferior to the Supreme Lord, because that is our position. It's not embarrassing to be inferior to God, and it's not inferior in a way that is demeaning. It's your natural position. He is superior. If he wasn't superior, then he wouldn't be God. And if you look around at our own condition, how can we claim to be superior to anything? We come here, we're given some time here, we're given some items to use, whether rightly or wrongly. Rightly means serving Krishna, wrongly means serving our senses, and then we depart. If we've served Krishna and developed proper consciousness, then we continue back home, back to Godhead. But if we try to be Indian givers and take what's been given us to serve the Lord, then we come back again and again and again. He makes the point, Srila Prabhupada, that even though Bali Maharaj was deprived of his possessions, what was the result? Besides that he had nothing, what was the result? The result was the Supreme Lord favored him by taking away all this distraction and all this. He was a king. When you're a king, it's pretty hard to be a king if you don't have anything, So you need some means, but it's what you call a Catch-22, because then it's easier to kind of slip into the I'm the king and I'm going to enjoy. It's just slip into that mode. So to protect his devotee, Krishna will remove the objects of possible distraction, determined. Srila Prabhupada considered himself very much blessed by Krishna because he took everything away from him at one point. He was a business person, and he had a good future ahead in business. But Krishna, and his intention was to serve with whatever he gained. But Krishna took it all away. He did a little fast forward. And Prabhupada realized that was his mercy. It was his personal mercy. I was talking yesterday, and we were discussing about actually having realization of Krishna as the person. The actual realization, not the mental, Krishna's a person, or it's in the book, but actually when we look on the altar, and we're seeing Krishna. We're really seeing Krishna, just like maybe I've heard about you. I don't know, what is your name? Govardhan Das. So I've heard about Govardhan Das. Like just again imagining a little bit, But then I come here and I actually see him. And he's a real person, you can interact with him, But that's actually the same good fortune that we are all entitled to. And not entitled in the mundane way. Sometimes they have this entitlement. You know, I feel that I've been a devotee for, 20 minutes, and I feel entitled to my space in the ashram, my floor in the ashram. Or I've been a devotee for 40 years, and people should know that. They should, not that kind of, that's illusion. That's bewilderment. But at the end, there's an entitlement, but it's a transcendental entitlement that Krishna guarantees you, that if you surrender unto me, have no faith, I'll protect you. And what's he going to protect us from is the material energy. And he's going to reveal himself to you. So just like when the curtain was dark on the stage the other night, they put the lights down, you couldn't see what they're doing, then the lights went on, you could see everything clearly. So in the same way, Krishna is going to give us these eyes to see him clearly. And it may seem like it's taking a really long time, and it may take a really long time in this lifetime. But what is this little lifetime, So some of us have gotten quite a bit older. At the end of this, actually a few days, I'll be 71. Who would have ever imagined when you're in your 20s? We thought somebody, like in our first temple in San Francisco, this lady came and she was 35 years old. And we were really suspicious, like, what does she want? She's so old. That's how we looked at it, But ultimately, this is just a flickering passing. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta mentioned that when you come in contact with the mantra, with Krishna consciousness, and you first come into the contact, it may take about 4 lifetimes to actually have full realization. So we don't even know which lifetime we may be in. And it's not like a hard and fast rule, but it takes some time to unwind, to get rid of all this accumulated dust that's on the mirror of our heart. So what is that dust that's on the mirror of our heart? We're just saying Cetta Darpana Darjanam. Get rid of the dust on the mirror of the heart. What is that dust? It's all the impressions that are left over from connecting with the material energy. Everything you do in life, it leaves an impression. That's why it's advisable to perform Krishna conscious activities, so you have Krishna conscious impressions. And the more you build up those impressions, the more diminished the other impressions become. That's why we do these samskaras, to build on the spiritual impressions, to put us in a more favorable condition. So Bali Maharaj understood the ultimate lesson, the ultimate teaching. He was a king, he had obligations, he had duties. He could have very well withdrawn, oh, wait a minute, this is going to cause some problems here. So, because he was surrendered, genuinely surrendered, not an artificial person. He understood that when one satisfies the Supreme Lord, then all other obligations are taken care of. He's not the doer, He doesn't have anything else to do. He has done everything, and he has no more obligations. That was his glory. And then the question was, well, what about his discrepancies? But because he has satisfied Krishna, it will be shown there was no discrepancies in his behavior. The nitpickers, the fault finders. I have there's some people, you maybe have some of them over in your country, I don't know, I hope you don't, but there's people that I call serial fault finders. They just can't stop, no matter what, And if something's perfect, it makes them angry, so then they'll still find nothing can be this perfect. There's got to be, they just go on like that. But the perfection in life comes through the service to Krishna. And whatever faults or discrepancy are absorbed. They're not any longer important. There is that saying about the spot on the moon. There's a spot on the moon. So what? We're going to say that, oh, just look at the moon. There's a spot on the moon. Like, here's the moon is so brilliant and shining and giving its beautiful light. And someone's going to zero in on there is a little dark spot on the moon, Is that a discrepancy? So when you chant those beautiful prayers in the morning, Chetadara Panamars, consider deeply their meaning. These were the powerful 8 instructions of Lord Chaitanya, left behind, and the only writing left behind. So, are there any questions or any points? Yeah. Just,
can I ask something that's not related to this?
Can you?
Ask a question that's not related to
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What was it when you first met Prabhupada that grabbed your attention?
That here was a person that was genuine. There was a real personality. That they have a Native American saying, he walks his talk. So he wasn't just saying things to us, but behind our backs doing something else. You could say he was an open book. And it was the first time that I'd ever met such a person, because I had been looking, I wasn't, interestingly enough, I was looking to find, enlightened people, but I wasn't thinking I needed a teacher. I just thought if I, come in contact with those people, you would just become enlightened, or they would tap you on the forehead and you'd become enlightened. I wasn't thinking you'd have to surrender. And I didn't, definitely didn't think that they would be telling me what to do and how to do it. I actually rebelled at that concept, But upon meeting Srila Prabhupada, here was a person who was completely genuine. There was no facade. For the first time I could understand what the word humility meant. We kind of had the idea humility was a undesirable character, because we usually thought it meant, poor, wimpy, downtrodden people, they'd get kicked and they wouldn't fight back, and, so it didn't seem like a very desirable quality. But with Srila Prabhupada, we understood what was humility by his behavior. One time in San Francisco, we had arranged a radio show, and it was the first time, and we were pretty excited, but then we thought, we asked him first, because the commentator, the person who did the show, he was notorious for insulting his guest. But he had a huge radio audience. I mean, people just loved to listen to him. And he would get, famous people would come and he would insult them, and they knew they were going to be insulted, and still they came because so many people will hear. So, hear about me. So Prabhupada was told about it, and he said, never mind, let them insult. At least they'll hear Hare Krishna. So he was willing to be insulted just to allow Krishna's name to be heard. So what happened is the show was in 2 parts. The guest had a small amount of time to say whatever they wanted to say, and then there would be calls from the radio audience. You could pick up your phone. In those days you didn't even have push button phones, you had to dial it, rounding. And you could call in and ask a question yourself to the guest. So Prabhupada perfectly crunched down the entire Krishna conscious philosophy in this, short little time that was allowed. And then you know. So now, and still the guy had been very nice. He hadn't said anything. He you know, like sometimes he'd say like, "You surely don't mean that, do you?" You know, like, you know, he didn't say anything. And so then the call-in came, and the first person to call in was Gargamuni. We were all by our phones. He goes, "Swamiji, what is the meaning of Hare Krishna?" You know, and Prabhupada answers. Then the next was another devotee, I think it was Uddhava, you know. Then the man says, "It seems that all these callers are your followers. Maybe we can hear from someone else, you know." So then this lady, "Swamiji," Prabhupada goes, "Yes. So you came over on a boat with free passage, right?" He goes, "Yes. So you were a freeloader, right?" Now, do you know what that freeloader? It's insulting. You know, it means you have no responsibility. You don't, you know, you take but you don't give. That's a freeloader. And she's saying, "So you're a freeloader?" Prabhupada said, "Yes." And an amazing thing. So then we thought, "Oh no, here it comes. This guy's going to jump in on it, you know." He did. You know what he said? He goes, "Well, that's enough of her," and knocked her off. So this person who made his living insulting famous people was completely captivated and charmed by Srila Prabhupada's humility and his honesty. And he understood here was a genuine person, no, a real holy person. And he respected him. Yeah.
One point which you mentioned about Malti Mataji is we glorify him for being very honest to his word. He gave a word and he kept no matter what. Are we glorifying Malti Mataji because Krishna is related to that whole conversation?
Yeah, yes, of course, you know. I mean, otherwise he'd just be another name in the history books, you know. And nowadays there is less concern with building character, you know, like in our education system. Just as long as you get the scores up, you know, that's enough. You can just be a total rascal. It doesn't matter, you know, get your scores. But in the Vedic system, there was character building. Even Krishna had 64 qualities that are glorified. And out of those 64, 50 of them, they can be attributed to the human person. But if you look at those 64 qualities, you barely find one available nowadays in the care. I mean, not to pick on my own country, but right now my country's having an election. And the two leading people, one is a fellow named Donald Trump, who's a very famous business person, and the other one is a lady politician. Her name is Hillary Clinton. And neither one of them are desirable in terms of character. You know, I mean, Hillary Clinton, she does have some, you know, she actually does have some desire to make things good for people, but she's a politician, and you've got to, like, you know, take care of business first. You know, so you can't really say people first. It's the situation first. And that guy, Mr. Trump, he's just a joke. I mean, you can't. But what's even more scary is that some people are taking him seriously. But the people who are taking him seriously are the lower class type of person, you know, the tobacco chewing, you know, cigarette smoking, beer drinking, what we call in America rednecks type of people, you know. And early on there was like, oh wow, yeah, he'll make America great again, you know, that's his platform campaign. I'll make America great again, you know. So then some people started thinking, wait, America's still great. What is this? You mean you're going to make, you know, and how are you going to do it? And he had, you know, so how are you going to do this? You know, just say, I'll make it great again. Well, how? I'll make it. He doesn't have any answers. So people are starting to pick up on that. You know, like and I'll get rid of the Muslims, that'll fix everything, I mean, he's not, he doesn't appear to think things through very well. And I was told, was it by you or somebody told me the other day that there's a chance he could win because both candidates are so devoid of any good qualities. Just the human qualities aren't there. What to speak of saintly qualities? Nobody wants to vote. So it's going to be a low voter turnout. So you could those people, the Trump people could actually win just out of they'll ride up on their Harley Davidsons and their jacked up pickup trucks and, they could swing it just because other people aren't going out there. So it might be a very interesting next 4 years for the rest of the world to have to to have such a fellow representing. And when you try, the president comes to your country and you have to roll out a big welcome and here comes a clown. But anyway, lack of character was what started that. Sorry. Didn't mean to talk politics, but it's an example. Sometimes we'll get saying this kind, it's just politics. Well, there's nothing wrong with politics if Krishna is part of the picture. Politics are there, it just means a certain aspect of service. It's not necessarily bad, it's only bad if it's not used for Krishna. Actually, sometimes people complain on, like when Bhagavad Gita, and it has all the names of all the fighters on the different sides, and why should we bother chanting the names of these fighters, these fighting men? What does that have to do with Krishna anyway, And Prabhupada said, they were there in the battlefield. Krishna was there in the battlefield. Anything connected with Krishna becomes Krishna. It's Krishnaized. Not that they become Krishna God, but they became. And what happened to them? They were when they were all killed by Krishna's desire, and they were given, a higher birth. So they certainly didn't lose. But anything connected with Krishna is Krishnaized. So, even politics can become Krishnaized if used in the right way. We've had devotees actually try to run for office, but so far, I don't know if anybody's been successful. There is Tulsi Gabbard, who's a representative in Hawaii, and she's a devotee of Krishna. She's not an ISKCON person, but she's definitely favorable to Srila Prabhupada. She spoke via telecom at the big affair in Calcutta last year, and actually she spoke brilliantly. It was really good, compared with all the other babble people who were saying. She spoke about Krishna, Krishna's God, and she spoke very straightforward. When I leave here, I'll go to your farm in the Govardhan. I'll spend Janmashtami there, and then I'll spend a few days in New Zealand, and then I go to Montreal, Canada, and they're having another, just like you had your big 50 event, they're having a 50 event. And before we went to England, we stopped in Montreal to see Srila Prabhupada, so I have that kind of connection. But then the week after that, on the 13th, there's a big event, just like you had your Sydney Opera House. So there's the Roosevelt Hotel in Washington, D.C., and that's the place where every president has his inaugural ball. After fighting and campaigning and winning, they have a big dance. And it's at the Roosevelt Hotel. So we're having a 50th anniversary celebration at that same place. And like you had some very pricey admission tickets, they have some very pricey admission tickets. And Tulsi Gabbard is coming in person, and several other well-known dignitaries, according to the material calculation. But these people all have an appreciation for Srila Prabhupada. They have understood that he's done something very unique, very special. And so they're very, very pleased to have the opportunity to come and express their appreciation and gratitude. We had a smaller event, maybe there was 250 people, 300, at a small theater in Pittsburgh recently. And Radhanath Maharaj was the person, the head. And there was an interesting lineup of guests. There was like one city council member. There was a very well-known yoga person, but I can't remember their name. And there was a famous NFL, means National Football League, football player, and I certainly don't remember his name. And I was thinking, wow, it's really strange, I'm a football player. But my God, this guy was amazing. And he really appreciated Krishna consciousness. And you could, like sometimes these people are called upon to say a few words. And you can tell by the words they say that they don't really know us. They're a little shy. Cut and dried little, congratulations, I'm glad you're here, blah, blah, blah. This fellow knew his stuff. And I was really surprised that he spoke really well, So when you get somebody who takes the time to know something about our movement, and they speak genuinely, you can really feel proud for Prabhupada, Naturally, we're going to say good things. But here's someone from the so-called outside. Actually, there's no outside. Everybody's part of Krishna's family. Some people just, it hasn't dawned upon them yet. But some people, they're taking the first step. Appreciation is a step. I can't even remember what your question was. Oh, sorry. I don't even know if I answered it. Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you very much. Canto Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Oh, one other thing I was going to say about the unusual, like I mentioned, just like how these deities came and they were bounced around, sent back, but Srila Prabhupada also had an interesting experience in Australia. I thought they were going to mention it yesterday, and they indirectly did. He was on his way here after a big campaign where he had, within a kind of few months, 4 months or whatever, he had put the inaugural annunciation in the ground for Mayapur, Vrindavan, and Bombay, I think. Anyway, it had been a very intense period, and so now he liked coming to Australia. He liked the climate, he liked the people, so he was coming here. And they made a stopover. They intended to make a stopover in Singapore, but it was rejected. They wouldn't let him in. So they had to go right away to Australia. So he was expected, but not right away. And Shyam Sundar calls up or one of them called the temple, the Prabhupada's coming tomorrow because, and he says, no, don't come, we're not ready yet. So, you can imagine telling Prabhupada, don't come. But they did. So the plane touched in Perth and they spent the night or the day in Perth and then came here. Whether it was here or Melbourne or wherever it was, but it was just kind of interesting how you could actually tell the pure devotee, don't come. Of course it was, just don't come right now, come, I mean, when you look at it, it's like, oh, if I could only have that chance in time back again, I wouldn't say no. So how conscious we have to be at every moment, Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna.